Good evening. My name is Melissa Liu, and I am the chairperson of the Como Community Council. Thank you for being with us tonight. Once again this year, the pandemic has made it unsafe for us to gather side by side in community, even though so many of us wanted to do this in person. So just as in 2020, we're delivering our annual report remotely. So whether you're joining us live or watching a recording, I want to thank you for being involved in our community, for being amazing neighbors, for your flexibility, for your generosity, and your willingness to make us a more responsive organization. We also have neighbors who've been thrown into dire straits economically and don't have enough food to get by, or in some cases, they don't have a roof over their heads. We also have our neighbors of color who are caught in the vice of systems and disparities that are squeezing their options time and again. As harsh as this year has been, it has also presented some incredible opportunities. It has forced us, or freed us, depending on your point of view, to try new things and to hammer away at the routine of business as usual. As a district council, it has given us ways to channel the strengths and the talents and the vision and the generosity of our neighbors in ways that have never occurred before. It has revealed a value and a trait that we call Como kindness. This year has also inspired us to put into words a new mission and vision for our district council, and we hope by an extension, a vision for our entire community. During the business portion of our meeting tonight, we will vote on this newly defined mission and vision. We intend to define our mission, which is the reason why we exist, this way. We connect and empower each other, creating a compassionate community, courageously addressing injustices of the past and the present, and forging a bold and inclusive future. We intend to define our vision, which is what we hope to achieve in this way: a vibrant, diverse, affordable neighborhood filled with the spirit of kindness and belonging. Last week we had our elections, and we were able to announce the winning candidates last week as well. That's on our Facebook page as well as our website, and I just want to welcome the new community members, and for the existing board members who have moved to different positions within the board. These are courageous people who are joining us and have stepped forward in order to bring this vision into a reality. So as we look back on a year that many of us want to forget, we want to first take a moment to celebrate all the ways in which we as a community rose to the challenge. And again, we couldn't have done that without the supportive neighbors that live in Como. So with that said, we will move on to a section from our Vice Chair, Olivia Morawicki.
Hello, I'm Olivia Morawicki, Vice Chair of the District Council. Every St. Paul neighborhood has a District Council. Here in Como, that's us, District 10 Community Council. We are an independent nonprofit that represents District 10, which is one of St. Paul's 17 neighborhood planning districts. Built into our system is that we are open, transparent, and accessible to anyone who lives in District 10. Our bylaws, which are the rules for how we operate, guarantee that. We do most of our work through 3 committees: environment, land use, and neighborhood relations. Now I know committee sounds official, boring, snoozy-woozy, but in reality, committees carve out the space and time where we as neighbors can combine our ideas and passions and power. They are an organized, constructive, ongoing way for us to team up and get things done. Prime example. In response to neighbors looking to make a difference, this year we added a 4th group, an anti-racism work group. These are neighbors working together to educate each other, to educate the rest of us, and more importantly, to do something to dismantle the disparities that give some of us privilege by denying it to others. The group is working together to build more inclusion into how we operate as an organization and more inclusion into our day-to-day lives, our ability to work across neighborhoods in St. Paul, our options for housing, and our sense of safety. These committees meet every month, and whether these committees meet in person or over the internet, they are an exercise in democracy in its best form. What that means is every community member can attend, speak, and vote at any of our committee meetings. We let you know as far in advance as we can when these meetings will take place and what everyone will be talking about. We try to eliminate as many barriers as we can so you can genuinely participate. It's like that with our board too. Board members are volunteers who are elected by you, our neighbors. We are accountable to you. The board, like our committees, meet every month. Board meetings are open to every community member, and we set aside a section at every meeting to exclusively address community concerns and what's on their mind. We work hard to make our committee and board meetings a trusted space to talk and listen. And that's not just lip service. In 2020, 833 community members sat in on those meetings. As neighbors, we may not always agree on the best path forward. But being a tolerant neighborhood means being open-minded to our diversity in residents, our diversity of experiences, our diversity of options and opinions, and priorities. By talking with each other, we have a better chance of finding common ground and making decisions that represent the full range of those who live here. Thank you.
So Jennifer Nelson, you're up next.
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Jennifer Nelson, a board member and one of the leaders of our anti-racism work group. We fundamentally believe, the one that Olivia mentioned, we fundamentally believe that better informed neighbors not only make better neighbors, they also make better decisions. That's why we put a lot of effort into communicating with our Como neighborhood. We try to be a reliable source of truthful, factual information. We're probably the first place you're going to hear about changes coming on the Route 3 bus, or what's going on with construction in the park, or new apartments proposed for the old Shalom home site or in Bandana Square. We've kept you up to date on what the Watershed District is doing to improve water quality in Como Lake. When the pandemic hit, we compiled a list of neighborhood restaurants, who was open, who was closed, who was offering carryout, when. More than 1,200 of you used that article as a reference so you could get a break from boxed mac and cheese and help keep our local businesses in business. We keep you informed in several different ways. Sometimes we bring in representatives to present information directly. We've done this on topics such as the city's redefinition of family, the new minimum wage and sick time ordinances, the upcoming zoning and parking revisions that are underway in residential districts and along transit corridors, and Ramsey County's shelter initiatives for unhoused residents. Every Friday, we send you an email newsletter about what's going on in Como. We must be doing something right. 5 years ago, 700 people subscribed to the newsletter, and now 1,700 people subscribe. If you don't get the newsletter in your inbox, you can sign up on our website or just read it on our website every week. And yes, we maintain a robust website, a little outdated in how it looks and works, but loaded with current, archival, and just plain useful information. We also submit articles every month to the Monitor and Park Bugle. Those are the free community newspapers that show up at your home. And we understand that communication is not a one-way street. That's why when we have a topic that makes sense, we put out a community survey so we can learn from your priorities and ideas. We hope you use one or all of those options to stay more involved in our neighborhood, stay informed, and maybe even be that someone who can provide answers to the people on Facebook and Nextdoor who are not paying attention.
Thank you, Jenny. As Olivia said earlier, the Como Community Council is an independent nonprofit organization. We are not part of the city or county government. However, most of our funding does come from the city of St. Paul. My name is Mike Ireland. I'm the treasurer of the district council, and here's a brief overview of our finances. Our main city grant, about $64,000 a year, is for community engagement. Our other major grant is about $6,000 a year, and it's from the city's innovation fund. Now, these grants pay for most of our day-to-day activities, such as salaries, office expenses, communication, and other initiatives that help us to build a stronger community. Some of the examples include the educational events, such as our Sunday series, the welcome book that we send out to new people who move into the neighborhood, maintaining the community food scraps recycling site in Como Park, and the postcards that we mail to every resident, inviting them to vote in our elections. Staff time dedicated to our community organizing is a high priority. It covers everything from staffing the board and committees to researching issues, coordinating volunteers, and keeping you informed. It also includes navigating the ins and outs of city departments, such as tracking licenses, permits, city council and commission actions, and the zoning variance proposals. It also includes responding to phone calls and emails from all of you. The pandemic means that we've had to put a lot of our plans on hold. For example, we've not been able to local high schools to schedule a youth summit. And for the time being, we've had to scuttle the meet and greets that we've had at apartment communities, which is really fun. It's good to meet the renters and focus on their concerns and priorities. And one of these days, we'll be able to get together again at social events face to face, even if it's on a small scale. But right now, we've diverted much of our efforts to meeting the needs of our community. For example, in November, we partnered with the Santa Foundation, the Neophet Buddhist Temple, as well as more than 30 volunteers to do a monthly distribution, to do a weekly distribution of roughly 1,000 boxes of food every Friday to neighbors who've been economically impacted by the pandemic. Because of our nonprofit status, this year in particular, we've been able to use our ability to serve as a fiscal agent in unprecedented ways. Primarily, we've found ways to leverage the amazing generosity of our neighborhood. The Como kindness signs that we've talked about, many of you have purchased, were more than just a way to lift the spirits and tap into the creative talents of our neighbors. They also served as a vehicle to raise more than $750 for the Como Park Falcon Heights Living at Home Block Nurse Program. And they help people, seniors, who are cut off from our community in the midst of this pandemic. Then at Thanksgiving, we teamed up with the North End South Como Block Nurse Program and TST Catering to provide fresh turkey dinners to isolated seniors in our neighborhood. We were hoping to raise enough money for about 50 meals and thought that might be a stretch. But thanks to you, we raised enough money to provide 150 meals to seniors, plus another 50 meals for homeless youth at the Booth Brown House. On top of that, we've partnered with the North Suburban Kiwanis Club of St. Paul and the Humphrey Job Corps Center to provide meal baskets for 35 families in need, as identified through local congregations and staff at Como Senior High School. But you weren't done. This February, we led a supply drive for unsheltered residents who'd been living in encampments in St. Paul and were being moved to emergency housing in Bandana Square, the former Bethel Hospital, and other locations. On the coldest weekend of the winter, you donated not only a U-Haul full of winter gear, you also contributed to more than $2,600 that we could pass along to the Ramsey County's Housing Stability Fund. Financially, we're able to benefit from the work and foresight of our previous board, who left us in a very strong financial position. When we add up the cash on hand and what the city owes us in reimbursements, we have a balance of about $62,000 in our reserves. And that translates into about 8 months worth of operating expenses. And that cushion may be crucial in navigating an uncertain future of city revenue. And the time may come, though, when we need to rely more and more on direct donations from you, our neighbors, so we can continue to do the level of work that we do. That's it for my report. Now I'll move on to Sarah.
Thanks, Mike. Hi, again, my name is Sarah Benscofer. I'm the chair of the Environment Committee. Our committee has a proud history of making change in the city. It was members of this committee who created the Capital Region Watershed District, which has done incredible work in improving the water quality of Como Lake and in beautifying the neighborhood at the same time. Members of this committee also created the Como Woodland Outdoors Classroom, a nature preserve and education site within the park that includes 8 distinct native plant communities and 27 interpretive sites. This year, the committee continued to organize its Como Lake cleanups. Last summer, to maintain social distancing, we set up a do-it-yourself kit so volunteers could go out on their own schedule. We had fewer volunteers overall, but they picked up more trash than 2019's more organized group events. This year, we will do a combination, both an in-person and a DIY, so you can contribute in the way you feel most comfortable. So stay tuned for more information on that. This year, our committee members have also looked beyond the city. We held a series of discussions with local members of Minnesota 350, representatives from Xcel Energy, and staff from the Citizens Utility Board, so we could assess the climate impact of Xcel's proposal to build a new gas-fired generating plant. The immediate result, because St. Paul grants Xcel a franchise to provide power, we asked the city to use that leverage to oppose Xcel's request to build that new fossil fuel power plant. We also submitted comments to the state in support of the Clean Cars Initiative. In 2020, we had to cancel our first ever community clothing swap, but we did revive the Como Park tree trek for the first time since 2012, a walking tour to learn about some of the tree species in the park. It was the only organized in-person event we sponsored this year, and it was immensely popular. For 2021, in partnership with Parks and Rec, we hope to double the number of tree species in the trek and update downloadable resources so visitors can make it a self-guided tour. We also partner with the Como Community Seed Library on 2 DIY events. We hosted a discussion on the University of Minnesota's Bee Project, which includes the pollinator skyrises in Como Park. We continue to operate our 24/7 food scraps recycling site, and we continue to push city departments to accept Ramsey County's offer to rebuild and improve the site. Unfortunately, the pandemic forced the city to cancel the annual citywide drop-off at the State Fairgrounds in 2020, but there is something to look forward to. We have signed up to be the lead organization for a revamped drop-off this year, tentatively scheduled for September 18th. So thanks for listening. Up next is Maggie.
Hi folks, I'm Maggie Zimmerman. I'm the chair of our land use committee. Land use is often the first place where the neighborhood learns about development projects, road projects, or other hyper-local concerns or ideas. This past year, projects that have come before us included the Mung College Prep Academy's new middle school building, rezoning for a 152-unit apartment building proposed for Bandana Square, a family shelter understudy for the Cameroon Community Center in Bandana Square, the opening of a women's resource recovery program in an iconic mansion on Midway Parkway, and MnDOT's rethinking I-94 process. When these kinds of projects come forward, we give neighbors a chance to raise questions, to express concerns, to make suggestions, and pay attention to the small details that can make a big difference in that final result. Using that knowledge, we leverage the city's zoning and site review process the best that we can. That gives us the potential power to modify or enhance the impact of development on our neighborhood. The long-awaited redevelopment of the Shalom home is a great example of this, though as folks hear me repeating in almost every meeting, as far as city decision makers are concerned, the Land Use Committee's recommendations are advisory, not compulsory. We pay a lot of attention to public infrastructure and the often competing needs of residents, property owners, drivers, pedestrians, and cyclists. Sometimes we have success, such as when the bike path improvements happen in Como Regional Park. Sometimes we're left standing on the curb, such as our attempt to get a marked crosswalk installed outside of the Como by the Lake apartments on East Como Boulevard. In all situations, there's good news and bad news. The good news on that one is that because we sought funding through the city's capital improvement budget, Public Works actually drew up a plan. So now we know how much that crosswalk on East Como Boulevard would cost. The bad news is that our proposal ranked number 13 and only the top 10 received funding. Land use handles some of the neighborhood's most routine issues, like when residents need a variance so they can build a garage closer to the property line than zoning allows. We keep track of vacant buildings, demolition permits, permits residents obtain for backyard chickens or short-term vacation rentals, and when the city revokes occupancy certificates for rental properties. Recent examples of variances include a sign variance for the rehab of Como Park Senior High, license conditions for Duke's Auto and Towing. And this year we worked with the Department of Safety and Inspections on a citywide evaluation of sound issues from athletic fields at Como High and other high schools and colleges throughout the city of St. Paul. We as a committee also oversee business licenses, which means that we give neighbors and business owners a chance to talk to each other, to learn about plans, expectations, and responsibilities, and if necessary, to put limits and conditions on how businesses can operate. This past year, for example, we held 2 meetings specifically to deal with disruptive impacts on residents from late night patrons at the halftime rec. Thanks to engaged neighbors, a responsive owner, and plenty of give and take, we drafted new license conditions that the proprietor, the neighbors, and the district council were all on board with. Conditions that reduced the problems, kept the bar in business, and genuinely set a citywide standard for how these kinds of disputes can be handled. We also facilitated the ongoing discussion of what should happen, if anything, with Como Lake Drive, which is that one-way street that runs on the north side of the lake. If you'll remember, the city closed that street last spring and summer without warning or consultation or planning in order to give pedestrians and cyclists more elbow room during that first wave of the pandemic. The city reopened that street after Labor Day, but now the city has closed it again for a few months to allow for that additional distancing. If you're someone who's looking for signs of progress, last year we didn't have any warning. This year the city gave us 2 days notice before putting up the barricades. In the big picture, now that everyone has seen the impacts of this real world experiment on East Como Boulevard, some residents, for a variety of reasons, want the street to stay closed permanently for motor vehicles. Some think it's fine to close the street during the lake's busiest months. Some want the street kept open year round. We've made sure residents and city staff have heard each other's perspectives and ideas and can wrestle with that full range of opportunity and impacts on safety, traffic flow, parking, access, and more, not only in the parks, but in the surrounding blocks and streets. So you'll have to stay tuned to land use to see what happens next. I'll kick it over to Sarah in Neighborhood Relations.
Thanks, Maggie. I'm Sarah Ryder, Chair of Neighborhood Relations. Our committee mixes serious fun with some serious work. Because we haven't been able to hold social events such as community yoga or our annual ice cream social, we've had to create other ways to promote and tap into our sense of community. So based on your suggestions, we spread the word about homes featuring your favorite Halloween and holiday decorations. We've started the Know Your Como feature on our website, which helps us to get to know some of the interesting neighbors and characters in our community. We crowdsourced ideas to name a giant ant sculpture that sits in the front yard of one of our neighbors. We distributed more than 125 20 is Plenty lawn signs to promote lower speed limits and improve neighborhood safety. We created 2 scavenger hunts for overlooked or mostly forgotten neighborhood landmarks and historical sites. Apparently, a lot of people were looking for an excuse to get out of the house because more than 800 people downloaded the search sheets for our website. We've just launched voting so you can help us pick a neighborhood mascot. Later this year, depending on herd immunity and everybody's comfort level, we're hoping to have smaller neighborhood level ice cream socials and a larger neighborhood harvest parade. As I said, we mix serious fun with serious work. The Como Kindness lawn signs, the Thanksgiving meals, and the weekly food distribution that Mike mentioned all were generated by our committee. The winter supply drive for unsheltered neighbors is the latest example of our members trying to leverage the assets of our community to make a direct positive impact on people's lives. Last spring and summer, after the onset of the pandemic and the killing of George Floyd, we organized food drives to meet the immediate needs of residents in other district councils who were cut off from grocery stores. We collected activity supplies for children directly affected by rioting. We collected household goods for residents of the Booth Brown House in our neighborhood. As we've gotten more experienced at this, we've become more intentional about building partnerships and relationships that we can sustain, that can increase our capacity and visibility as a district council, and that can increase the effectiveness of our partners. Neighborhood Relations also oversees our community's anti-racism work group. Since the killing of George Floyd, this group of neighborhood residents have been meeting monthly and sometimes more often. They are collaborating on ways to educate each other and the neighborhood at large about how systems of racism and exclusion play out in Como, and on ways to take action and use our community's position of privilege to undo these systems. The work group held 3 different Sunday series presentations in autumn, focusing on different perspectives of racial equity and injustices. These presentations included training for mapping prejudices work in Ramsey County, which is demonstrating the strain and scope of racially exclusionary covenants in property deeds here in Como and elsewhere. In the short term, group members intend to focus efforts on a public art project related to racial covenants, home, and belonging. Long term, they intend to focus on driving change in zoning, land use standards of neighborhood character, and public policy so we can create more affordability, access, and inclusion in housing options in District 10.
Hello, I'm Michael Kupta, Executive Director of the Como Community Council. We like to tell ourselves that the core of our work as a district council is improving life where we live. But those words are empty unless we act. To act effectively, those of us who lead this organization have to understand the lives of people of color, of essential workers, and of other neighbors whose often precarious day-to-day realities we too often fail to grasp. Please reach out to us with your suggestions of how, together, we can act to dismantle inequity, do work that reflects the true richness of our community, and create a neighborhood that is demonstrably welcoming to all. We intend to listen to you, learn from you, and work arm in arm with you.